history of Vijayanagara kingdom, its rise, its decline, and the effects on society and economy. Vijayanagara Empire, because of many reasons, was a place which was visited by a large number of foreign travelers, traders like Fernão Nunes, Domingo Paes, both Portuguese, and Nunes was a horse trader. Then Abdul Razak, who was an emissary from the Persian Emperor Shah Rukh, who came at the court of Devaraya II. Then Niccolo Conti, Athanasius Nikitin, who stayed at Bidar, which was away from the Vijayanagar capital, but from there he observed some things about Vijayanagara history. So these writings of the foreign travelers constitute a very important source for writing the history of Vijayanagar. Apart from this, voluminous epigraphical data from the inscriptions which was published during the existence of Vijayanagar Empire, which was issued by not only the kings but many very important officials and the Nayakas, who were the military officials of the king, that also constitutes a very important source, along with a large number of secular as well as religious literature which was composed during this period, like a didactic poem which was possibly written by Krishna Devaraya himself, which was known as Amukta Malyada. Then Raya Vasakamu, which was another court chronicle, comprises very important source material for Vijayanagara history. There is a very important shift regarding the writing of Vijayanagara history also. When Krishnaswamy Iyengar started writing about Vijayanagara history, he made Vijayanagara as the last bastion of Hindu resistance to the marauding Sultanate army, a position that is Vijayanagar defended the norms of Hindu civilization in the peninsular India. This trend continued in the writings of later historians, but we find two important shifts taking place. One, from, you can say, a Kannadiga position, which as enunciated by Saletor or Father Heras, who tried to show that the Vijayanagar kings, they were inheritors of a Kannadiga culture as enunciated by the Hoysalas. They were the inheritors of the Hoysala tradition. On the other, historians like Venkataramanaya, along with Nilakantha Shastri, they tried to show that the Vijayanagara kings, they had important links with the Telugu tradition, particularly with the Kakatiyas. Later, a new perspective that we have to see Vijayanagar from a larger perspective. With this, I end the discussion on the historiographical analysis of the Vijayanagara history.
So then, what were the main events preceding the establishment of Vijayanagara Empire?
The emergence of Vijayanagar Empire can be seen as a convergence of two major developments taking place in peninsular India in particular and the Indian subcontinent in general. What are they? Number one, with the decline of the Chola paramount empire, we find some new regional kingdoms emerging. On the Andhra sector, we find rise of the Kakatiyas. Now, the Hoysalas, though their origin was in Karnataka, later they stranded both the Kannada Maidan region as well as the Tamil heartland also. along with Yadavas of Devagiri. So it was a kind of four-cornered struggle which was going on just after the decline of the Chola Empire in the 13th century. Along with this development, they were continuously fighting among each other with important implications for the society. There was another event which started with the inception of the Delhi Sultanate, and particularly with Alauddin Khalji at the throne. He started a series of raids to the heartland of the peninsular India, reaching as far as Madurai by 1310. Now, Vijayanagara Empire can be seen as a converging point of these two developments. Number one, when these four kingdoms were fighting among each other, we will find that the resource base of the four kingdoms, they were different. The Pandyas, their base was in the rich Kaveri Delta or Vaigai Delta region with vibrant agriculture supplemented by incomes from trade in the littoral sector. On the other hand, the kingdoms like Kakatiyas and Hoysalas, their origin, unlike the earlier kingdoms, were in the region which was much more inland, dryland region where agriculture was precarious. So they had to supplement their income with incomes from trade, as well as they had to launch seriously, strategically into further expansion. And because of this, the expanding Hoysala as well as the Kakatiya kingdoms, they ultimately came into the course of the Sultanate. As a result, there was the South Indian kingdoms, one by one, they were decimated by the Sultanate. After the decline of or the demise of the Kakatiyas, there was a brief interregnum of the Kampilis, and when even they were defeated, it was only the Hoysalas left among the quote-unquote Hindu kingdoms to fight against the sultans. Now, just after the death of Muhammad bin Tughlaq, or even before that, there was a confusion which was going on within the Sultanate also, because Muhammad bin Tughlaq had reached up to Devagiri. You know that. He transferred his capital from Delhi to Daulatabad. Later he shifted to Delhi also. With his shift, there was confusion reigning in the Sultanate region also. And because of this confusion in the Sultanate, as well as the demise of all the existing major powers, we find a vacuum which was taken up by the Vijayanagara kings. They started their career. There are also contending versions. One version is the Kannadiga version, as I told you, is that they were the inheritors of the Hoysalas, and after the demise of the Kampilis, they were sheltered by third Ballal, who was a Hoysala king. After the death of third Ballal, these people were free and they established a kingdom. This is one version. Another version, which is possibly much more dependable, that is given by Venkataramanaya, supported by Nilakantha Shastri, that is, earlier they were the employees of Kakatiya king Pratap Rudra Deva. He was defeated by Muhammad bin Tughlaq. These people who founded Vijayanagara kingdom, that is Harihar, Bukka, and their another three brothers, who were all sons of Sangama. That's why this dynasty is known as the Sangama dynasty. Now, these people, they took refuge with the Kampili ruler. Now, when Kampili ruler was also defeated and he died while fighting, they were captured and sent to Delhi, where they were converted into Islam. After that, they were again sent as Sultanate governors near around Kampili. later, under the influence of a Hindu religious leader, Madhavacharya or Vidyaranya, they apotheosized and they established the basis of a new kingdom that was finally known as Vijayanagar. This is the background of the establishment of Vijayanagara kingdom. As I told you, the major idea regarding Vijayanagar is that it was fighting a war against Islam to protect the Hindu way of life. Now, this we find that a fight going on with not only Sultanate, because very soon it withdrew itself from Deccan, but its place was filled up by a new kingdom that was established, which was known as Bahmani kingdom under the leadership of Hasan Gangu, who was later rechristianed as Alauddin Bahman Shah. Now, with the rise of the Bahmani kingdom at the northwestern part of Vijayanagar, we find that continuous fight going on, and it is recorded in the testimonies of foreign travelers, contemporary writers, as well as inscriptional evidences. Like Farishta, he writes that there was a fight between the second Bahmani ruler, Muhammad, and the Vijayanagara king, where there was use of gunpowder. Now, this went on with monotonous regularity in most of the cases, at least in the earlier period, though they were successful on the northeastern part or in south, they were repeatedly defeated by the Bahmanis, at least in the initial period. Later, there was a significant shift and some important technological changes introduced by Devaraya II in the military organization, which resulted in strengthening of the Vijayanagara army, and they started winning wars against the Bahmani Sultanate.
So, sir, these are the implications of the changes brought about by Devaraya II.
Yes. First of all, we will like to see what are the changes that he introduced. Number one, he started inducting Muslim cavalry archers. The main military arm of the Sultanate army was its cavalry archers, who came from the Central Asia, and the soldiers of the indigenous origin, they were repeatedly defeated by a small number of very efficient cavalry archers, and he started introducing these archers. Number two, he started importing good quality war horses from Central Asia. India, at least in the peninsular part, it was deficient of a very good breed of war horses. So he started inducting good quality horses from Central Asia. As we find that Abdur Razzaq, he was an emissary who came to the court of Zamorin at his request, but later when Devaraya II heard the news about the arrival of Abdur Razzaq, he promptly invited him to his court, and Abdur Razzaq gives a very lively testimony about the courtly atmosphere of Devaraya II's time. These two changes, it had a very serious implication for Vijayanagara polity, its military organization. As I told you, that it strengthened the army, as well as it had some serious implications for the social as well as cultural norms of Vijayanagara kingdom. find very important changes taking place, at least in the elite behavior, that they started getting themselves acquainted with a quote unquote Muslim way of life. In the recent researches, one historian, Philip Wagoner, he shows that two very important changes in dress code took place at this point. What are they? One, they adopted a conical cap, which is very different from the traditional royal headgear, that is kirit, mukut, that is a crown. Here they were introducing a new type of conical cap, cloth made, which was known as kullai, and another a long tunic which was known as kabai. The South Indian kings like Zamorin, Abdur Razzaq found to his astonishment that they were bare on the upper part of the body. But in the Vijayanagara court, he found that their dress code has changed. They have introduced this kabai and kullai, something which is akin to the Islamic way of dressing oneself. It realized, because of the political compulsions, that to converse with the wider world, it has to change, make some important changes in its dress code, in its way of life, as well as the same Devaraya too, to accommodate these cavalry archers, started building mosques within Vijayanagara city. Later, by the end of the 15th century, the Sangama dynasty declined, Vijayanagara empire was getting weakened, and this was bolstered by two generals, one Saluva Narasimha and the founder of the Tuluva dynasty. They were all big generals. This is another very important that Devaraya II instituted, that during his time some very important military officials, they started gaining ground, and it came to a logical conclusion when the political power was wrested by these military generals. Krishna Devaraya, he was a scion of the later Tuluva dynasty, and during his period we find some more important changes taking place, because by then the Vijayanagara empire was weakened because of the internal dissensions, number one, and the revolts by the important military officials, the Nayakas. Because of these challenges before the Vijayanagara kingdom, Krishna Devaraya instituted the system of building very important forts at strategically important locations under the control of Brahmin generals, Durgadanda Nayaka, the Niyogis, who didn't have local connection. That's why they were free from that kind of prejudice, and they were fully loyal to the king. So during the period of Krishna Devaraya, these building of forts are an important, they are very important, and these forts, they were manned by the Portuguese gunners, Muslim gunners, as well as foot soldiers drawn from the non-peasant martial communities from different regions of South India. They were later known as the Palayakkarar, the persons who were responsible for Palayam, that is a kind of military establishment. And these two institutions made once more the Vijayanagara kingdom victorious. It was almost unsurpassed, and during this period we find that the Vijayanagara empire time and again defeating not only Bahmani. By 1527 the Bahmani empire has declined, but its place was later taken up by 5 successor sultans. So these successors, they were repeatedly defeated by Vijayanagara army because of the changes instituted by Krishna Devaraya. After his death, Krishna Devaraya, he was succeeded by his brothers, but the real power behind the throne was his son-in-law, Aliya Ramaraya, who started now meddling with the internal dissensions, internal conflicts within the successor sultanates, Deccan sultanates. This was very much successful for 2 decades. But finally, in 1565, all these sultanates, when they realized that their internal dissensions are being utilized by Vijayanagara for its own benefit, they came together and not only killed Aliya Ramaraya in open battle, but also plundered the city, Vijayanagara, which is the present site known as Hampi in Karnataka. It was never rehabilitated. The remnants of the Vijayanagara Empire, the rump, it shifted to Penukonda, which was near. And from there, a new history of the rump of Vijayanagar and the successors, that is the Nayaka kingdoms of different parts of South India, particularly in Tamil Nadu, it starts.
So, do you think this continuous warfare had any impact on the Vijayanagar society?
Obviously, very important question. Number one, there were some important shifts in the agrarian society. The land tenure pattern of Vijayanagar, there we find that the Nayankara system, a kind of prebendal land assignment given to the military commanders, which was known as the Amaram Khani. This was a very important aspect of the Vijayanagara agrarian society, along with 2 other kinds of land tenure, one known as the Vandaravada, that is the king's crown land, the income from which was meant for the upkeep of the forts, as well as the Manyam kind of land, a tax-free land, which was given to the Brahmins as well as the religious establishment like the temples, and in this period we find a spurt of temple building activities. Along with this, their serious concern to monopolize the trade of war horses, along with the import of cannons and things related to the musketry. So this brings us the interrelation between economy and warfare. The economy, it was geared to produce things for waging wars.
Sir, in such a context, how can the real significance of this Vijayanagar Empire be deciphered?
I have just given you that there are contending views. Number one, from Krishnaswamy Iyengar, it is stated that it was a clash of civilization, where the Islamicate or Islamic world was fighting a war with the Indic civilization. Also, we have seen that some very important changes has been introduced by Devaraya II by inducting the Muslim cavalry archers, building mosques. So while they professed that they were fighting against invading Muslim army, they were changing themselves, and in this process they had to imbibe certain aspects which does not help us to hold the myth that it was an Indic civilization fighting to keep up the dharmic prescriptions. With 1498 Vasco da Gama reaching Calicut, the expanding European civilization has also reached. At this point, Vijayanagara was standing at the frontiers, both politically as well as ecologically. Why politically? Because it was somewhat different from the Islamicate civilization and trying to adapt itself to the changing political idioms. Ecologically, why? Because it is a tradition from the Kakatiyas as well as Hoysalas that slowly the polity, it was expanding itself from the riverine delta to the semi-dry uplands of the peninsular India. The tank irrigation expanded the frontier of agriculture from the riverine delta into the dry upland region. Not only was it at the frontier, but we find that it imbibed certain aspects from all kinds of ways of life and became an epitome of eclectic cosmopolitanism in dress code as well as the architectural norms. In Vijayanagara ruins, we find not only the typical quote-unquote Hindu trabate technique of building temples, the Islamic arcuate, that is the dome-shaped architecture, also was instituted, as we find in the stable as well as the lotus mahal in other architectural ruins also. So it becomes a very epitome of eclectic cosmopolitanism, and that is the real significance of Vijayanagar, for which we will remember its contributions for days to come.